Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you to those who have traveled to Detroit. We'll start things off. Ambassador Tai will deliver some opening remarks, and then we'll take a few questions. And after those remarks, we'll give instructions and pass the mic around. Ambassador Tai.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. We've had a very productive discussion over the last 2 days, and it has been great to see my counterparts in person. And it is very fitting that we meet here in Detroit. This is a city that has become synonymous with rebirth, revitalization, and a dynamic innovation, themes that are highly relevant for Apec today. Detroit's resilience, perseverance, and dedication carry the torch forward through many lifetimes. And our discussions here were focused on how we can use trade to put workers at the center for our collective strength and growth. The theme for our host year is creating a resilient and sustainable future for all. This is especially important as APEC economies continue to navigate through shared challenges, including fragile supply chains, growing inequality, and a worsening climate crisis. The last couple of days have been focused on building on the solid foundation provided by our recent APEC hosts, especially Malaysia, New Zealand, and then Thailand last year. We had a positive discussion on how APEC economies can continue the momentum from the 12th Ministerial Conference and support the transformation of the World Trade Organization so that it can better respond to today's challenges. It was a pleasure to also have Dr. Ngozi with us to share her wisdom as well yesterday. We had a fruitful session on integrating the principles of sustainability and inclusion in our respective trade policies and our engagements with our trading partners. I appreciated the robust participation from fellow ministers to share their experiences and best practices. I'm especially proud of the inaugural labor dialogue that we had with leaders from the United Auto Workers and the AFL-CIO yesterday morning. For years, APEC has had an established track for business, but there's not been a parallel track for workers and the issues that impact them. If we are to fully adapt to today's economy, if we want to successfully build our economies, as President Biden says, from the bottom up and the middle out, workers' voices must be at the center of the discourse. I feel strongly that the labor dialogue served that purpose, and I was grateful to have Sean Fain and Frederick Redmond with us. I'm confident that APEC's reputation as an incubator of ideas and a catalyst for cooperation can also benefit our work in driving a race to the top for workers throughout the region. The United States continues to believe that trade can and must be a force for good. We have an opportunity in APEC to forge a new path for our people and to deliver an inclusive prosperity. This includes lifting up women entrepreneurs, helping small businesses grow, and unlocking economic opportunities for underrepresented parts of our populations. The United States is fully committed to working with APEC economies to realize this vision and to strengthen our ties across this region. We have more work to do leading up to the Leaders Summit in November, and I look forward to working with my fellow ministers in the months ahead. Thank you, and I'm happy to take a few questions.
Great. So if you're called on, Raquel here will bring you over a mic. Our first question will come from Yuka Hayashi with the Wall Street Journal.
Yuka, over here.
Please stand up, Yuka, so you can.
Hi, I would like to ask about your meeting this morning with China's Commerce Minister, Wang Wentao. According to the readout, you emphasized the need to address the imbalances caused by China's state-led non-market approach to trade and economy. How does the U.S. plan to respond to this concern? Are you considering using domestic tools such as Section 301? Then also related to the meeting with Mr. Wang, you also raised concern about China's recent action against American companies. What is the U.S.'s plan to respond to China's recent action against Micron? Thank you.
Thank you, Yuka, and thank you for reading our statement very carefully. I actually think I took a look at the statement as well. I'm the one doing the meeting, so I'm not the one drafting the statement, but I thought the statement did a very nice job of summarizing the conversation that we did have. You've asked about two different kinds of responses. Let me take the first one. In terms of the imbalance in our trade relationship, it's something that we as an administration and that I have been raising for a long time now. If you think back to that first speech that I gave in October of 2021, that's probably the most comprehensive laying out that I did in that speech. And in the times that I've met with Minister Wang and have had conversations also with Vice Premier Liu, this continues to come up. In terms of our response, I think that you see aspects of our response across our economic policies and certainly our international economic policies. The benefit of sitting down and having a conversation with an interlocutor from Beijing is so that we can understand each other better and understand how we are experiencing the impacts that we have on each other's economies. And that is the point of the communication. In Bali, both of our presidents instructed the teams to communicate, and that's what we've been doing. On the other piece, I think that the readout pretty much says it all. In terms of more recent activities, I don't have anything to add.
Next question will come from Dave Lauder from Reuters.
Hi, thanks, Ambassador. It's good to be back in Detroit. I wanted to follow up on Yuka's question, but take a little bit of a broader view of it. The relationship between China and the United States has been suffering for quite some time. A lot of these countries that are represented here at this meeting depend on both, for their trading relationship. They trade with both countries. Some have expressed concerns about the U.S.-China relationship sort of spiraling downward into, a Cold War kind of footing, fragmentation of the global economy. What does maintaining communications with your Chinese counterpart, how does that affect the other countries in Southeast Asia?
How does maintaining communication?
Well, how does
let me put it this way, I guess. I've said many times, and it's because it's true, and I believe it to be true, and I know it to be true, which is the U.S.-China trade and economic relationship is profoundly consequential. For us as the United States, for China, as the two largest economies in the world, how we relate to each other has implications not only for our economies, our workers, our businesses, our middle classes, but for the entire world. We know that. What the task that we have as the two largest economies in the world is to be able to confront the challenges that we pose to each other with the sense of responsibility that we are also holding up a large part of the world economy that the rest of the world relies on.
The next question will come from Rintaro Tobita from Nikkei. Please raise your hand and we'll bring a mic over to you.
Oh, thank you for letting me ask you my question. I would like to ask you about the fact that joint statement of Apec was not adopted today, I guess. Where was the difference in the position with China? And I want to ask, is there any chance that Apec could make the joint statement at the summit meeting this autumn? Thank you.
So you did see a chair's draft, a chair's statement instead of a joint statement at forums like this. When you can't get consensus on the entire statement, the fallback is a chair's statement. I'll just direct you to the statement, which I think should be out. Sam, is the statement out, the chair's statement? Because the beauty of this particular chair's statement is that it really speaks for itself. It's quite transparent. And you'll see that there is one particular paragraph where we did not get consensus. There is a footnote that describes and explains why we didn't. To your second question about whether it's possible that we could get a joint statement at the leaders' meeting, it's certainly possible. And I think that in the spirit of Apec, which has at its core cooperation, right? It's Asia-Pacific economic cooperation. I think that that is something that we'll continue to be open to, and I know that all 21 economies will be working on.
The next question will come from Margaret Spiegelman with Inside U.S. Trade.
Thank you. Ambassador Tai, I'm wondering if you could speak a little about how you're thinking about the digital trade negotiations, and in particular with IPEF members. As you know, we're hearing concerns from some on the left in the U.S. who are afraid the U.S. could be negotiating away the U.S. government or other governments' ability to regulate big tech firms like Google and Amazon, and then on the other hand, some business groups that say that they worry that rules under the new agreement could be, in their view, looser than ones that U.S. has negotiated before on things like data flows and data localization, that they contend would be, bad for small and medium-sized businesses too. And so I'm wondering, we're hearing that the U.S. is essentially trying to kind of thread the needle on those concerns. I'm wondering if that's right, and how you would talk about sort of your approach to digital trade.
So first, let me just orient this conversation. Today we're closing out APEC, so I really want to focus on APEC. But let me touch a little bit on some of the dynamics you've described. You have literally, in the dynamics that you've described, defined the job of USTR. We are here to balance and to work through the equities of the entire U.S. economy as we engage with other partners on economic and trade matters. So at the core of our approach as the Biden-Harris administration for USTR and our worker-centered approach, right, we have committed to deepening and broadening our consultations with our stakeholders. We have committed to creating and promoting as much transparency as possible, and I believe that where we are today, we are the most transparent USTR, and we will work to be more transparent. We've got public summaries of our proposals now on our website. In terms of hearing from our stakeholders and our partners, that is our job. And whether it's in the context of IPEF and digital negotiations or here at APEC, I just wanted to highlight, in the APEC context, which is where I want to focus today, we are reforming by doing. We are bringing our approach by showing and bringing our partners in. So in terms of that consultative, expanding the table at the trade policy decision-making table, yesterday morning's labor leaders dialogue, first of all, I want to reflect on how many of our APEC partners participated and came, asked questions, and were taking notes, and were interested in that conversation. But also, I want to point out that that was a very important conversation for us in terms of bringing some of our most important partners, labor leaders, to APEC to have that conversation. But one of the most important aspects of our vision for how we feel we need to be doing trade to make it more inclusive and more sustainable. But I don't want to stop there, because at lunch we also had a panel with small medium enterprises, and we had 3 SME founders on the stage, describing the types of work that they're doing. And all 3 of them come from the Detroit community. And the work that they do is directly connected to this city where we're hosting APEC. And as we had that engagement, I looked around the room again at all the trade ministers in the room, and I know for a fact that they're making connections to the small and medium businesses at home in their countries, and thinking about how what they are hearing here connects to what they're hearing at home, connects to what more we can do in this APEC forum to help to support those types of companies and the smalls. And finally, I also know that you came to my Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community event at the Philippine American Community Center here in Detroit. I want to thank the members of the press corps and the trade press who came out. For some of you, it might have been your first opportunity to go to an Asian American community center. Those community centers are all over our country. A lot of those folks who came out to that event on Wednesday afternoon also came to our reception last night and got to meet with trade ministers and government representatives from the APEC economies, many of whom they have connections with. So I just really want to highlight our commitment to expanding that stakeholder conversation to make sure that what we are doing in trade, whether it's through a cooperative forum like APEC or through a negotiation or through the WTO, is built on the foundation that our results will only be inclusive if our process is also inclusive.
Thank you. Our final question will come from Stephen Overly with Politico.
Hi, thank you, Ambassador. I wanted to ask about the worker-centered trade policy, and I know you've really been emphasizing the reorientation of the Biden administration's trade policy around that at this event. It seems we've also heard from some ambassadors or trade ministers who have sort of defended the traditional free trade as beneficial to workers or questioned whether the same policies that benefit American workers will also benefit workers in the Indo-Pacific. And so I guess my question is, to what extent do you feel your colleagues you met with here are sort of bought into this new vision of trade that the Biden administration is putting out there, and what more can the administration do to bring them along?
This is the benefit of hosting APEC. I'm looking at my team members who are in the room. The hard part of hosting APEC is it's a ton of work. It's a ton of work, and I only show up at the end stages for events like this. But the real benefit of hosting something like APEC, hosting the ministers responsible for trade meeting, is one, showcasing a city like Detroit with its story and history, showing off our incredible stakeholders and our constituencies. But when you host APEC, and I know this because I've gone to APEC when others have hosted it, it is an incredible opportunity to learn about the host country or the host economy. It's an incredible opportunity to meet the people in that economy, to get a flavor for the culture and the history, and then also to understand the economic outlook and the aspirations and the challenges. So the point of this worker-centered trade policy, bringing the labor leaders to APEC, bringing the APEC ministers here to a dialogue like that, is to give our partners and those ministers the opportunity to understand us better, to have them understand why it is so imperative for us to be putting workers at the center of our trade policy so that they can be better partners to us. And this is what we do when we go to other economies host years, is that through the exercise and all of the side events, it helps us to think about and to understand how to be a better partner. And that is at the core of the APEC mission. It is about an incubator of ideas. It is not a negotiating forum. It is about allowing us to be agile, to adapt. And at the core of that adaptation, especially at a time like right now when there's so much changing in the world around us, is better understanding each other. So in the conversations that I've had with ministers since yesterday and through this event, I know that we are giving them a lot of food for thought. And one of the things that I've heard from one of my counterparts was, what really connects here is that what you're trying to do in that bottom-up, middle-out approach is to build a strong middle class. And that counterpart told me that is something we all have in common in APEC. And I think that that needs to be the foundation for how we approach this next phase of APEC and thinking about how we support each other in a goal that we all share for ourselves and for each other.
Thank you, Ambassador Tai. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We'll ask the press to sit tight for a second while the ambassador leaves.
Thank you, guys.
And we will see many of you tomorrow at the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework Ministerial nearby. Thanks.